Picture this, absolutely nothing. No TikTok, no pizza, no planets, no light, just void. Then boom, God steps in and says, "Let there be light." And just like that, the greatest story ever told begins. God's looking at this light, and he's like, this is good. But he's just getting started. He separates light from darkness, creating the first day and night. But one day isn't enough. He's got a 6-day plan that's about to change everything. Day 2, God creates the sky, separating the waters above from the waters below. Day 3 is when things get really interesting. He pulls the waters aside, revealing dry land, and suddenly plants start sprouting everywhere. We're talking trees, flowers, grass, the world's first garden. No irrigation needed. By day 4, God's thinking bigger, way bigger. He hangs the sun, moon, and stars in the sky like cosmic decorations, but they're not just for show. These lights are like the world's first calendar, marking seasons, days, and years. Day 5 is when things really start moving, literally. God fills the seas with everything from tiny fish to massive whales, and the skies become alive with birds of every kind. The air is filled with wings and songs, the seas teeming with life. Then comes day 6, the big finale of creation. God creates all the land animals, lions, elephants, giraffes, and everything in between. But he saved the best for last. God says, let's make humans in our image. Not just another animal, but beings that can create, think, love, and reflect who he is. Adam, the first human, gets the coolest job ever, naming all the animals. But God sees that Adam is lonely. None of these amazing creatures is quite right for human companionship. So God puts Adam into a deep sleep, takes one of his ribs, and creates Eve, the first woman. Talk about a power couple. God gives Adam and Eve a perfect home in Eden with just one rule. Don't eat from this one specific tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Sounds simple enough, right? Enter the serpent, the smoothest talker in history. He convinces Eve that God is holding out on them, that this forbidden fruit will make them like God. Eve takes a bite, shares it with Adam, and just like that, paradise lost. When God comes looking for them, they're hiding, wearing leaves and pointing fingers. But the damage is done. God lays out the consequences. Life's about to get a lot harder. But even in this dark moment, he gives them hope. A promise that one day, one of Eve's descendants will crush the serpent's head. Adam and Eve start their family outside of Eden. Their sons, Cain and Abel, couldn't be more different. Abel's a shepherd, Cain's a farmer. When they bring offerings to God, Abel gives his best lambs, while Cain, well, he kind of phones it in with some crops. God accepts Abel's offering, but rejects Cain's. Cain gets jealous, really jealous. Instead of upping his game, he takes his brother out to a field and kills him. It's the world's first murder, and it's between brothers. God confronts Cain, and his response is legendary. Am I my brother's keeper? Spoiler alert, yes, he was. God sends him away as a wanderer, but even then shows mercy by protecting him from revenge killers. As humans multiply across the earth, so does trouble. People start living longer. We're talking hundreds of years, but they're not using that time wisely. Violence spreads like a virus. The world becomes so corrupt that God regrets creating humans. But there's one guy who's different, Noah. Noah's like that one friend who stays good when everyone else goes bad. God tells him, I'm hitting the reset button on creation, but I want you and your family to survive. The instructions are wild. Build a massive boat, gather 2 of every animal, and wait for something nobody has ever seen before. Rain. Noah does exactly what God says, even though it probably seemed crazy to everyone else. I mean, imagine building a giant boat on dry land while your neighbors mock you. But Noah keeps at it for decades. Finally, the animals come, Noah's family boards, and God shuts the door. Then the sky cracks open. Rain pours down for 40 days and 40 nights. Water bursts from underground. Everything and everyone outside the ark is wiped away. The water rises so high, it covers the mountains. The ark floats for months while the world below is reshaped. Finally, the waters recede. Noah sends out a raven, then a dove. When the dove returns with an olive branch, it's the first sign of new life. God tells Noah it's time to leave the ark. And just imagine that first step onto a world wiped clean. God makes a promise. Never again will he flood the entire earth. He seals this promise with the first rainbow. Yes, that's why we have rainbows. He tells Noah's family to multiply and fill the earth again. But it's not long before humans are back to their old tricks. Everyone on Earth speaks the same language, and they decide to build a tower so tall it would reach heaven. Classic humans, always trying to make a name for themselves, but God's not impressed. He confuses their languages, and suddenly the construction site sounds like a UN meeting without translators. Unable to understand each other, people scatter across the earth, forming different nations and cultures. But God's got a plan. Enter Abram. Spoiler alert, God later changes his name to Abraham. He's living in Ur, a major city in ancient Mesopotamia, when God gives him the ultimate challenge: leave everything you know and go somewhere. God doesn't even tell him where at first, just go. The crazy part? Abram goes. God promises to make him into a great nation, bless him, and through him bless the entire world. There's just one small problem. Abram and his wife Sarai can't have children. But when God makes promises, he keeps them, even if they seem impossible. Years pass and still no child. Sarai gets impatient. We're talking decades of waiting here, and she comes up with her own plan. She tells Abram to have a child with her servant, Hagar. This goes about as well as you'd expect. Hagar does have a son, Ishmael, but this isn't God's plan, and it creates some serious family drama. Finally, when Abram is 99 years old, yes, you heard that right, God shows up again. He changes Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai becomes Sarah. God promises them a son of their own, and Sarah laughs. I mean, wouldn't you? She's 90 years old, but God gets the last laugh, because sure enough, Isaac is born just as promised. Meanwhile, there's trouble brewing in Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot lives. These cities are so wicked that God decides to destroy them. Abraham bargains with God like a pro at a marketplace, asking if he'll spare the cities for 50 righteous people, then 45, then all the way down to 10. But turns out there aren't even 10 good people there. Angels warn Lot to get out fast. They escort Lot's family out, telling them not to look back. But Lot's wife just can't resist that one last look and becomes a pillar of salt. The cities are destroyed, but Lot and his daughters survive. Back to Isaac. He grows up, and it's time for the ultimate test of Abraham's faith. God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son, the one he waited 100 years for. Abraham actually goes through with it, almost. Just as he raises the knife, God stops him and provides a ram instead. It was a test of faith, and Abraham passed with flying colors. Isaac grows up and marries Rebekah, but that's a whole story itself. His servant praying for a sign, Rebekah watering camels, love at first sight. It's like a Bronze Age romance novel. They have twins, Esau and Jacob, who are different as can be. Esau's a rugged hunter. Jacob's more of a smooth operator who hangs out in tents. Here's where things get messy. Esau comes in hungry one day, and Jacob trades him a bowl of stew for his birthright. Talk about a bad deal. Later, Jacob, with his mother's help, tricks his blind father into giving him Esau's blessing by pretending to be his brother. Pro tip: if you have to wear goatskins to feel like your sibling, you might be the bad guy. Esau is furious, like murder planning furious, so Jacob runs for his life to his uncle Laban's place. On the way, he has this incredible dream of angels going up and down a stairway to heaven, yes, just like the song, and God renews the promises he made to Abraham. Jacob arrives at Laban's and falls in love with Rachel, Laban's younger daughter. He works 7 years to marry her, but on the wedding night, Laban pulls a switcheroo and gives him Leah, the older daughter, instead. Jacob ends up working another 7 years for Rachel. What just irony, huh? The deceiver gets deceived. Jacob ends up with 12 sons and a daughter from his wives and their servants. But Rachel, his favorite wife, struggles to have children. When she finally has Joseph, he becomes Jacob's favorite son. Spoiler alert, showing favoritism to one kid when you have 12 sons is never a good idea. But Jacob does favor Joseph and even gives him a special rainbow-colored coat. The brothers get jealous of Joseph, especially when he starts having dreams about them bowing down to him, and then makes the rookie mistake of telling them about it. They sell him into slavery, dip his fancy coat in goat's blood, and tell their father he was killed by a wild animal. Jacob is devastated, but this story's far from over. Joseph lands in Egypt, and despite being sold as a slave, he quickly rises to run his master Potiphar's household. But success comes with its own problems. Potiphar's wife keeps hitting on Joseph, and when he turns her down, she accuses him of assault. Talk about workplace drama. Joseph ends up in prison, but even there, he can't help but succeed. He becomes the prison manager. Apparently, management skills run in the family. In prison, Joseph meets Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, who both have weird dreams. Joseph interprets them. The cupbearer will be restored to his position, the baker, not so much. Joseph asks the cupbearer to remember him, but the guy gets his job back and completely forgets about Joseph for 2 whole years. Finally, Pharaoh himself has some dreams that nobody can interpret. He sees 7 fat cows eaten by 7 skinny cows, and 7 plump heads of grain swallowed by 7 thin ones. The cupbearer suddenly remembers, oh yeah, that Hebrew guy in prison. Joseph gets cleaned up and brought before Pharaoh. Joseph tells Pharaoh his dreams mean 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Then he adds some unsolicited advice. You should find someone wise to manage this situation. Pharaoh looks at Joseph like, you do realize you're describing yourself, right? Just like that, Joseph goes from prisoner to prime minister of Egypt. Not bad for a guy who started as a slave. Joseph's plan is brilliant. During the 7 good years, he stores up grain like crazy. When the famine hits, Egypt is the only country prepared. People come from everywhere to buy food, including, you guessed it, Joseph's brothers. They don't recognize him. It's been years, and he's dressed like an Egyptian ruler, but he recognizes them instantly. Joseph puts them through a series of tests. He accuses them of being spies, demands they bring their youngest brother Benjamin, Rachel's other son, and later frames Benjamin for theft. Why all the drama? Joseph wants to see if they've changed, if they'd sacrifice Benjamin like they sacrificed him. But this time, his brother Judah steps up and offers himself in Benjamin's place. It's a total transformation from the guys who sold their brother into slavery. Joseph can't hold it in anymore. He sends out all the Egyptians and breaks down crying so loud they can hear him outside. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? His brothers are terrified. Wouldn't you be? The guy they sold into slavery is now the 2nd most powerful man in Egypt. But Joseph sees the bigger picture. Don't be afraid, he tells them. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to save many lives during this famine. It's probably the greatest comeback story in Genesis. Jacob learns his son is alive and moves the whole family to Egypt, all 70 of them. Pharaoh gives them the best land in Egypt, and they settle in Goshen. Jacob gets to see Joseph again and meet his grandchildren before he dies. On his deathbed, Jacob blesses all his sons, giving each a prophecy about their tribe's futures. He gives Judah a particularly significant blessing, prophesying that the scepter won't depart from his line, a promise pointing to a future king. Genesis ends with Jacob's death and burial back in Canaan. Joseph's brothers worry he'll finally take revenge, but he reassures them again about God's bigger plan. Joseph lives to see his great-grandchildren and dies at 110, making his family promise to carry his bones back to Canaan when God brings them home. The book closes with Joseph's death, but the story is far from over. His family has grown into a large community living in Egypt. They're safe, prosperous, and growing in number. But remember, that prophecy God gave Abraham about his descendants being strangers in a foreign land? Well, that's setting up the next chapter of the story. But that's a tale for another book. And that's Genesis, the story of beginnings. It's a wild ride from creation to catastrophe, from Babel to blessing, from betrayal to reconciliation. Through it all, we see God working his plan, using imperfect people and impossible situations to set the stage for something bigger than anyone could imagine. If you enjoyed this story of Genesis, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Look out for future videos for each of the books of the Bible, and check out our shorts for more in-depth versions of all of the stories. And comment below to let us know what this story means to you.